Social learning theory. Social learning theory is a theory of learning and social behavior which proposes that new behavior can be acquired by observing and imitating others. It states that learning is a cognitive process that takes place in a social context and can occur purely through observation or direct instruction, even in the absence of motor reproduction or direct reinforcement. In addition to the observation of behavior, learning also occurred through the observation of reward and punishment, a process known as vicarious reinforcement. When a particular behavior is rewarded regularly, it will most likely persist. Conversely, if a particular behavior is constantly punished, it will most likely desist. The theory expands on the traditional behavior theories in which behavior is governed solely by reinforcement, by placing emphasis on the important rules of various internal processes of the learning individual. And social control theory. Most people would commit crime if not for the controls that society places on individuals through institutions such as school, workplace, church, and families. Theorists believe it a society's responsibility to maintain a certain degree of stability and certainly in an individual life, to make the rules and responsibilities clear and to create other activities to the art of criminal activity. Then, ang key concept kay people learn through observing others' behavior, attitude, and outcomes of those behavior. Most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling from observing others. One form an idea of how new behavior are performed, and on later occasion, this coded information served as guide for action. Bandura, this coded information serve as a guide for action. So social learning theory explain human behavior in terms of continuous reciprocal interaction between cognitive, behavioral, and environmental influences. Dayan, ang reciprocal determinism is Bandura believe in a reciprocal determines, that is, a world and personal behavior cause each other, while behaviorism essentially state that one's environment cause one behavior. Bandura, who was studying adolescent aggression, found this too simplistic, and so in addition, so he suggested that behavior causes environment as well. So later, Bandura's son considered personality as an interaction between three components: the environment, behavior, and one's psychological process. Then social learning theory has sometimes been called a bridge between behaviorist and cognitive learning theories because it encompasses attention, memory, and motivation. The theory is related to Vygotsky's social development theory and lives situated learning, which also emphasizes the importance of social learning.
Individuals that are observed are called models. In society, children are surrounded by many influential models, such as parents within the family, characters in children's TV, friends within their peer group, and teachers at school. Those people are called models, and these models provide examples of behavior to observe and imitate. Examples are their muscular and feminine figure or how they look, pro and anti-social, etc. Children pay attention to some of these people, models, and encode their behavior. At a time, they may imitate or copy the behavior they have observed. So, As we observe that there are some kids who already know how to say bad words, even 4 years old, and that is my own personal observation. They may do this regardless of whether the behavior that they saw or observe is gender appropriate or not. But there are a number of phrases that make it more likely that a child will reproduce that behavior that its society deems appropriate for its gender. First, the child is more likely to attend to and imitate those people it perceives as similar to itself. Consequently, it is more likely to imitate behavior modeled by people of the same gender. Second, the people around the child the child will respond to the behavior it imitates, either reinforcement or punishment. So, there are parents that will only laugh and somehow go for it when their child imitates the behavior even if it is not good. So the child will think that what he or she doing is rewarding and it is good. That's why they will continue doing it, and there are also some parents that will not tolerate such a sample, especially if it's not good for the child. Reinforcement can be positive or negative, but the important factor is that it will as well lead to a change in the person's behavior. Third, the child will also take into account of what happens to other people when deciding whether or not to copy someone's action. A person learns by observing the consequences of another person's behavior. For example, a younger sister observing an older sister being rewarded for a particular behavior is more likely to repeat that behavior herself. This is known as a vicarious reinforcement. Children will have a number of models which they identify. These may be people in their immediate world, such as parents or older siblings, or could be fantasy characters or people in the media. The motivation to identify with a particular model is that they have a quality which the individual would like to possess. Identification occurs with another person, the model, and involves taking on or adopting observed behaviors, values, beliefs, and attitudes of the person with whom you are identifying. The term identification as used by social learning theory is similar to the Freudian term related to the Oedipus complex. For example, they both involve internalizing or adopting another person's behavior. And when we say identification, it is a different to imitation, as it may involve a number of behaviors being adopted. Whereas imitation as well involves copying a single behavior. SLT or social learning theory is often described as the bridge between traditional learning theory and the cognitive approach. This is because it focuses on how mental cognitive factors are involved in learning. Unlike Skinner, Bandura 1977 believes that humans are active information processors and think about the relationship between their behavior and its consequences. Therefore, individuals do not automatically observe the behavior of a model and imitate it. There is some, though, prior to imitation, and this consideration is called meditational processes. This occurs between observing the behavior and imitating it or not response. So, there are 4 meditational processes proposed by Bandura. Number 1 is attention. It is the extent to which we are exposed or notice the behavior. For a behavior to be limited, it has to grab our attention. We observe many behaviors on a daily basis, and many of those are not noteworthy. Attention is therefore extremely important in whether a behavior has an influence in others imitating it. In order to learn, observers must attend to the model behavior. Number two is retention. It is how well the behavior is remembered. The behavior may be noticed, but if it's not remembered, which obviously prevents imitation, it is important, therefore, that a memory of the behavior is formed to be performed later by the observer. In order to reproduce an observed behavior, observers must be able to remember features of the behavior. Number 3 is reproduction. This is the ability to perform the behavior that the model has just demonstrated. We see much behavior on a daily basis that we would like to be able to imitate, but that is not always possible. We are limited by our physical ability, and for that reason, even if we wish to reproduce the behavior, we cannot. The fourth and the last one is the motivation. This is the will to perform the behavior. The rewards and punishment that follow a behavior will be considered by the observer. If the perceived rewards outweigh the perceived cost, if there are any, then the behavior will be more likely to be imitated by the observer.
So the routine activity theory. The routine activity theory was developed by Marcus Filson in conjunction with Lawrence Cohen in 1979. The term routine carried two meanings. Most important, it was a technical term that referred to the everyday life that people in society followed, when and where they worked, attended school, recreated, and stayed home. More implicit, the term routine meant to imply the mundane in life, not the special or abnormal. Cohen and Felson were calling attention to the fact that amount of crime was influenced not by pathological features of society but rather by its normal organization. So there are three elements that must be present for a crime to occur. So number one, like the offenders, these are the people who are motivated to commit the crimes. Second, suitable targets, the presence of things that are valued and that can be transported fairly easily. And three, absence of capable guardians, people to prevent the criminal activity. So routine activity approach predicts how changes in social media and economic conditions influence the overall crime and victimization rate. The routine of activities people partake in over the course of their day and night lives that makes some individuals more susceptible to being viewed as suitable targets by a rational calculating offender. So the essential aspect of routine activities theory is the interaction of motivation, opportunity, and targets. In this way, the presence of guardians will deter most the offenders, rendering event attractive target of limits. Therefore, the presence of opportunity coupled with a lack of guardianship increases criminal motivation and the likelihood of an offense taking place.
Containment Theory by Walter Reckless. Walter Reckless, American criminologist, born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on January 19, 1899, wrote a book called Juvenile Delinquency, in which explained how young offenders become criminals, who became known because of his theory, Containment Theory. Containment Theory. In a deviant society, how do people avoid deviance? It contends that there are two components to prevent criminal behavior in society. One is outer containment, which is about community socialization and application of social norms and rules. Then, number two is inner containment, the controlling of the self by a favorable of self-frustration, tolerance, and ability to follow norms. Pushful force that cause deviant behavior. Reckless said that we are all but through pushes, pulls, and pull an individual deviant behavior. We can see such pushes with children are threatened by other children to join a gang. An example of pull is when child sees that in order to get money to buy things, he or she can join a gang or reach their objective. They are pulled into gang by its action as a way of earning status and making money. Some examples of forces and are unhappiness with living condition and family issues, or conflicts over aggressiveness, anger, and hostility, economic problems, frustration, and boredom and racism. Some pools can be dealing with peers, family members, subculture, and groups. The outer society factors whole society and individuals in line, and inner factor is there to protect against deviation. The internal factor is provided by group and society, the state, tribes, villages, family, and other nuclear groups of that manner. There has been certain responsibilities and guidelines for the individual. and they are provided by external containment.
9 Assumptions of the theory. Sutherland provide the backup for how people obtain definitions favorable or unfavorable to violation of the law. While explicating the theory, Sutherland suggests that the following 9 assumptions guide how the theory is able to explain criminal behavior. Each assumption is reviewed below. Criminal behavior is like other behaviors are learned. That theorists receive criticism due to the first assumption, that criminal behavior is learned in no unique way from other behavior. The main criticism drawn from the assumptions is that the theory is overboard by claiming to explain all behavior. Learning criminal behaviors occurs through interactions with people via communication. All forms of communications are valuable avenue for one to learn criminal behaviors. The means through which one can learn criminal behaviors through communical includes but not limited to personal face-to-face communication, written communication such as letters and economic mail, video chat, and telephone conversation. Primary and intimate social group are responsible for teaching the vast majority of criminal behaviors. The essence of this assumption is that just contact alone with criminals will not result in someone becoming criminals. If one father was even imprisoned or ever participate in the criminal behavior, this does not mean that one will become criminal. But according to the theory, the primary and intimate social group will include biological parents, adoptive parents, step-parents or ex-step-parents. It will also include siblings, more distant kin, such as cousins, aunts and uncles, and other relatives as well. Learning criminal behavior requires knowing that the technique necessary to commit the crimes, and the reasons, socialization, attitudes involved with committing such criminal acts. There are been reported incidents of parents overly teaching their children to steal, sell drugs, or commit other criminal acts. While these instances do serve to underscore the way one learned the technique necessary to commit criminal acts, teaching the reasons and rationalizations and attitudes are not necessarily done in the concrete way.
The father and the guest. The father and the guest tend to do this procedure most of the time the guest visits. The child may also observe that the father does not this with all the guests, and that the children are never permitted to follow the father and the guest to the other room. Differential association theory will suggest that by learning this is the continuation example of the first reporter. So it talks about the father and the children. So if ever the adult shows some bad doings, how to be a criminal as a child is easy to adopt the technique. Not saying necessarily mean that the child will become a criminal. According to Edwin H. Sutherland, he was a sociologist and a professor. Siya ang naghimo sa theory to explain the reason why people commit crime. Basically, criminal behavior is learned by associating with other criminal individuals. Criminal behavior will adapt to ourselves if the criminal associate in our surrounding. It gives us learn how to be a criminal. Criminal behaviors is learned behaviors. Criminal behaviors is learned behaviors. Basically correct, it's because of interaction with other persons maybe, or in a process of communication. Criminal behaviors is learned by interacting with other people, by communicating with words and gestures. Criminal behaviors nakukuha na to by interacting and communicating sa mga tao gamit ang istorya ng mga lihok. Napatay uban diri na kuan. The main portion of learning the criminal behaviors happens among small groups of people. Learning about crime includes learning the technique of communicating a crime, as well learning the motivation and attitudes towards crime. Legal codes demonstrate what goods or bad and provide a motivation for crime. A person become a criminal because of frequent criminal patterns.
Punishment has been traditional method of crime control. Punishment is the intentional infliction or torture and hurt. Yet punishment has been an area of significant dispute. When looking at theoretical justification for punishment outside the criminal justice system, it is important to address the main theories of punishment and what they aim to achieve. These theories can be placed under two categories: utilitarianism and retributism. Theory believes the uses punishment is validated as it can aid the prevention of future crime and reduce the consequences of crime. In order to lower the crime rate, the suffering of the offender must be counterbalanced by the prevention of future pain to individuals. Cabodino and Lignan, 2007. This enacts as a forward-looking theory and can be seen as a moral response against wrongdoers, famously promoted by Jeremy Bentham in 1748 to 1832. Considering that but it creates a significant amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. Therefore, this makes a punishment morally right in the eyes of utilitarian. In contrast, retributism penalizes wrongdoers for the illegal acts committed, so it is considered as a backward-looking theory. Brooks, 2012. The main rationale to retribute punishment is that the offender is defender of it. Murphy, 2007. And the punishment should be in promotion of the crime. Brooks, 2012. Retributism has been established in the Lex Talionis, an eye for an eye, a zot for a zot, a life for a life. Exodus 12:23, verse 5, and retributionists believe that retribution should be a mean to an end, but an end in itself. I may agree that the harness of sanction is arranged with perspective, difference, influence. Nevertheless, retributism still believe criminals should be evaluate the consequences of committing a crime. Civil injunction and preparing order have been popular uses of punishment outside of the criminal justice system. ASBOs are governmental arrangements that offer protection to the community from action that are expected to create distress or annoyance. They are not intended to penalize and delinquent or act as penalties. Although a breach can result in a criminal system, Home Office 2012. Civil injunction took over from several previously used devices like the ABSO. The court has been satisfied that the individual has participate is likely to participate in behavior that is also able to cause inconvenience and trouble before granting an injunction. Crime and Disorder Act 1998, different to the ASBO. A criminal record is not obtained with the injunction is in breach. Yet punishment can include supervision within the community or even imprisonment for those over age of 14. Wexel 2014. Parenting order can be given to parents whose child has received an ASBO. A child safety order has been found guilty at the offense. This essay will criticize and access the theoretical justification for use of punishment outside the criminal justice system, while considering the use of ASBOs, civil injunction and parenting order in terms with the justification primarily deterrence, rehabilitation, and incapacitation can be placed into a ideology of authoritarianism.